Yeah, thank you everybody for coming to this small workshop in order to explain a little bit how Dharmamitra can help in translation and research for Tibetan, Sanskrit, and related classical Asian languages. So yeah, I'm Sebastian. I'm on the team since we started in 2023, and today Sada is also here to join us. Yeah. Maybe Sarah, you want to just say hi. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sharacha Bertok, and I've joined the Dharmamitra's great team in this year, the beginning of this year, and I'm supporting Sebastian during this workshop.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So let me see my screen. I will be giving an introduction into Dharmamitra and what the different functionalities are that we are currently providing. And for some of you on this call, you might have already been to that kind of presentation before because there's just so many people who come new to the platform, but then also people who have been using it for a while. So there's a certain chance that things we are explaining this time you might have already heard or seen before. In the second part of the workshop, we will be looking at some interactive examples that some of you thankfully have submitted in advance, so we can take them as a starting point for looking at Dharmamitra in an interactive way, see how it actually functions, and also the kind of problems and difficulties that we encounter. And I think it's also an important opportunity for us to get some, the opportunity to have a direct discussion with all of you who are using the platform or who want to use the platform. So in that sense, this workshop has two goals. On the one hand, we would like to introduce Dharmamitra and just to communicate what it can do, and also to make it accessible for those of you who have not yet had an opportunity to familiarize yourself with it. But then we would also like to see this as an opportunity to learn from you what you would like to see on Dharmamitra, what kind of maybe additional data, additional functionality, but also the type of problems you encounter, the kind of difficulties that happen on Dharmamitra. This is a good opportunity for us really to learn how we can improve the platform and make it more useful to all of you who are using it. Yeah, so just to again give a brief overview of the schedule. So first, in the beginning, I will give a presentation that will be roughly 30 to 35 minutes, and then we have 10 minutes Q&A regarding the presentation, and after that we will take a 15-minute break. And after the break, which must then be, I think, the 6 p.m. CET or 12 Eastern Time, we will start with a collaborative session where we look at the submitted material and also interactively look at functions of Dharmamitra and how we can use them and apply them to our material. Now coming to the introduction presentation, I have 6 parts to show. So first, an introduction into what Dharmamitra as a project actually is. Then our OCR function. So basically starting from the very first step, how we can turn text into machine readable text. Then the Mitra translate and grammatical analysis functionality. Then the Mitra explore system. A few words about Dharma Nexus and also about our Mitra browser extension. So this is actually not everything that Dharmamitra can do, but I think for a workshop of this size, this must be a good introduction into the main functionality. So coming first to the question, what is Dharmamitra? It has started as a research project originally at UC Berkeley in 2023 and is now supported by the Tada Foundation and the Tohoku University as well. So there are 3 institutions here involved. It is focusing on integrating advanced data-driven methods into the daily workflow of translators and researchers of textual material of the Buddhist tradition. So we cover Tibetan, Sanskrit, Pali, and Chinese literature in that regard. And currently we provide machine translation, grammatical analysis, advanced search systems, and OCR for Tibetan, Sanskrit, Pali, and Buddhist Chinese. And Dharmamitra also features the Dharma Nexus database, which functions as the textual reference engine of Dharmamitra, which has all the textual data stored and also intertextual links that make it possible to explore multilingual parallels across different corpora and also within the same corpora. It's hopefully not difficult to find the website, so you can go to the website dharmamitra.org. But also, if you want to use a QR code, we have also the QR code here. But I think the website should be easy to find. Now coming to the OCR function, which is the first part of Dharmamitra. So um, what does OCR even mean? To start in a very basic sense, OCR is basically the process of turning an image of a picture, a book page, and so on into a machine readable text. So if we want to use the text in a word processor or for machine translation or for any other task like searching and so on, OCR is usually the first step. And you can basically imagine this. We have a picture of our image, but we, of course, cannot yet search inside of this representation. So we need to do something with it in order to make it searchable. And this is where the OCR tool comes in. Dharmamitra currently has two different OCR engines that are functioning behind the system. So, and we have a system that will automatically determine which of the two models is being used. So when you open the OCR tool, you can choose between the Mitra BDSC model, which is currently under development together with the BDSC and which provides the most reliable quality for OCR of Tibetan material. There are some smaller problems with the tool, of course. We can discuss that later, but I think for the rendering of Tibetan block prints as well as Ume to some extent, this is currently the most reliable solution. And then we also have the Mitra Surya model, which is optimized for Indic scripts. So if you have Devanagari prints, for example, that represent Sanskrit text, this is a good model to do that, even though it's not without problems either. And we are constantly trying to improve the quality. You can upload up to 20 pages at the moment, up to 150 megabytes in size. And you also have the option to automatically convert the output into, if the input is Devanagari, into IIST, or if the input is Tibetan, then we can also render it into Wiley transliteration. And it's also directly integrated into our OCR, into our translation tool, so you can directly translate from images, for example. How does the interface look like? So we have this OCR selector here at the left side of dharmamitra.org. So if you click on that OCR selector, then this OCR window opens. And on the top left, you can choose the model. So currently it's set to auto, but you can also choose the BDSC model if you have Tibetan material, or the Surya model for Sanskrit or other Indic scripts. And then you basically can either drag and drop the file directly into the interface, or you can click the browse file button here and then yeah, navigate to your file. And after adding the file, you have to click the play button here in order to start the processing. And yeah, I think it's important to notice that our OCR system works best if the image is in landscape orientation. So if it's flipped 90 degrees, this might cause problems. And yeah, as mentioned before, you have the option here to toggle the conversion from Devanagari to IST or Tibetan Unicode to Wiley. That is possible. And on smaller text, we render the text directly into the window. But if it's a larger text, then you will get a link to a file here that you can then automatically download. So this is yeah, this is the output format. Currently, the OCR system for Tibetan does not handle interlinear annotations, glosses, and so on, because this is a very complex annotation problem. You can imagine there can be like yeah, all kinds of difficulties connected to that. So currently our system will just drop those annotations and glosses. Moving on to the Mitra translation and the grammatical analysis part. So this is maybe the future that most of you know, or that Dharmamitra is most known for. So this is the neural machine translation system that has advanced functions for intertextual searching, grammatical, and contextual explanations. And in that sense, Dharmamitra offers three different modes. And all of these three different modes actually offer also slightly different translations. So this um, is due to the technological mechanisms involved. So the different modes have different emphasis in how the technology works behind that. And for that reason, you will also get a different output. And these main modes are the translation mode, the grammar mode, and the research mode. And in order to open the translation mode, you just click on the translation icon on the left-hand side of the menu. And if you want to translate from an image, you can use this upload button where you can select an image or drag and drop, and then you can yeah, translate from the image, or you can type in the text, paste in the text. And we mainly support Sanskrit, Pali, Tibetan, and Classical Chinese, even though it will work if you input other languages as well. So for example, Japanese is also supported, but we are optimizing our system to work especially well on these languages. Yeah. We have a number of settings for the translation system that maybe not everybody is aware of. So there's a settings button, and after clicking on the settings button, you can choose between the three different translation modes. So the one of them is translation, grammar, and research. Then we also have the option to specify the input encoding. We have the auto detect mode, which most of the time works well, but if you are using some specific um, transliteration of Sanskrit, for example, then it might be a good idea to specify that. For example, Harvard Kyoto is can create some problems if you don't specify that. Yeah, then we have the output language, which is of course very important. You can set the target language that you want to translate into. The default setting here is English, and we provide other languages, even though the quality when translating into English is generally the best. So this is the most reliable setting. But we are actively collecting also data to translate into other languages. And recently we have added more data for Japanese and for Korean and also for modern Chinese. So we are trying to improve the quality for those languages. In the translation mode, you have a number of additional functions. So on the one hand, we have the feedback button. You can vote up or vote down a translation. And if you vote down, you also get the opportunity to leave some remarks about what is problematic with the phrase. So you can leave a comment about the problems, and then you can also yeah, optionally leave your name. And we are looking very actively at this feedback. So this is extremely helpful for us to know what kind of improvements we might need to make if there are problems, like for example, the wrong output language. This sometimes happens that people set the target language to Japanese, but then the output is in Chinese, for example. That's a programming mistake. And this is a really good way for us to be alerted about that. And also, it's really helpful for us to see where we can improve the system. So please, this feedback system is really helpful for us if our users make use of that. Then we have the citation function, which we just added a couple of days ago. And this is something that came up again and again. And I think it's also in one of the submissions we got in advance of the workshop where somebody was asking about how to cite Dharmamitra. So we have added this now. If you click on the citation button, then you will get a permanent stable link that is stored in our database. And we also will make a copy of that on GitHub. So this will be a stable data for the future. And then you can yeah, use these references in the article that you are working on and so on. So this is now added. Then we also have yeah, the function to copy the translation or to save it into a text file. And also after the translation has rendered, we will give the option to switch to the other modes like grammar, research, and explore directly, so you don't have to navigate into the menu all every time. Yeah. Now, moving on to the grammar mode. So this is um, enabling a more detailed breakdown of the sentence. So if you start with a Tibetan sentence, for example, it gives a word segmentation, and then it also provides links into Christian Steinert's Tibetan dictionary for all of the individual words. It needs to be said at this point that we do not yet have a dedicated high quality segmentation engine for Tibetan, and this shows sometimes that the segmentation of our system and the dictionary entries don't line up perfectly, for example, but we are working on this to provide a more coherent segmentation in the future. For Sanskrit, we actually have a dedicated segmentation and grammatical analysis engine. So if you click this button, we have a special button for the Sanskrit grammar analysis, which will not show anything if you are translating from Tibetan or from Chinese, but for Sanskrit it will. And this then uses the digital corpus of Sanskrit by Oliver Helwig as the main data storage in order to segment the words and to give grammatical tagging. So we have morphosyntactic tagging, we have the compound breakdown, and also the dictionary entries from Abde, Monnier Williams, as well as the Petersburger dictionary, together with links to the actual PDF pages. So this is all available, and you can also switch this to Indic style, which then will use Indic labels for the grammar description, even though I think that still could be a bit more comprehensive than it is right now. Moving on from the grammatical explanation mode to the research mode. So again, this is by toggling the mode to research or by clicking the research button at the end of the translation. This will give a translation and then also a contextual analysis of the intertextual relationship of that passage. So it will use the Dharma Nexus database in order to automatically identify possible parallel passages, translations into other languages, and more. And yeah, it gives related text in different languages and also the ability to explore more results from the same language in the explore mode. And we also have the segment view, which is a new functionality we added a couple of weeks ago, which allows to learn more about the context of a specific result. And this is especially important for the metadata. So when opening the segment view, this will give the metadata here, which is, yeah, very important to know where the e-text is actually sourced from. So we have recently added that for the Tibetan Kangyo and the Tengyo, and also for our Sanskrit e-text, which was a long time problem that we didn't have a good metadata catalog for our Sanskrit e-text. So this has now been added. And then we are also providing links into Dharma Nexus, our own database, and then Toda for Dirge Kangyo and Tengyo block prints that are here scanned at Tohoku University, and then also to RKTS, where you can then also access the block prints. So this will link directly on the folio level, so you will be directly at the position of the text. And yeah, then it provides a translation and the original text, of course, then a translation, and then also some parallel passages from Dharma Nexus if they are relevant to that segment. So that's also included. We have a number of known problems, of course, and I think we can use the workshop to discuss these in more details. But I think it's really important to stress at this point that the translations created by Dharmamitra are never perfect, and there are probably mistakes in each of them. I think to my experience, it has not happened yet that Dharmamitra produced something that was absolutely perfect, but this is just something to be aware of. So this is a system that has known weaknesses. As we mentioned before, the Tibetan grammatical annotations don't always align perfectly with dictionary entries, and a dedicated segmentation engine here would be really great, and hopefully that will come in the future. And then also currently we are starting to add English translation references that give also some bibliographical information. So this has been absent from Dharmamitra before, and it is something that we really want to add, but it's not that easy because there's, of course, one needs to have agreements with the publishers and so on, and this is a slow process, but one by one we try to make this possible, that we can show the actual English translations that have already been created as a reference for our users. Now moving on to the Mitra Explore system. So this is basically the search and discovery side of Dharmamitra, and it addresses a long-standing friction point for translators and researchers in Buddhist studies. So when working on a passage in Tibetan, for example, we might need to find parallels in Sanskrit or from Pali and Chinese. Obviously, these challenges occur again and again in both research and in translation. And Explorer is basically designed to address this and to provide one interface where all of these queries can be made. And for that, in order to access the Mitra Explorer function, we have the button over here. And by clicking on the Explore button, you can then enter the Explore interface, where we have a number of search methods combined. So Explore is basically multiple search engines in the same place. So we have the what we call the traditional search system, which uses linguistically preprocessed keyword search. So for Sanskrit, obviously this requires a linguistic stack where we provide word segmentation and so on to facilitate the search. Then for Tibetan, yeah, also some like stemming and so on needs to be done. Then we provide monolingual semantic search. So this is the ability to search within the same language and to retrieve matching passages. And then we have also the ability to provide cross-lingual semantic search. So you can use a passage in Sanskrit, for example, to find a matching passage in Tibetan. You can also use our system to do conceptual and topical queries, like, for example, the explanation of the 5 strengths. You can take an English query and then search, for example, in Tibetan literature based on that English query. It does not always work 100% perfectly, and this needs to be said at this point. So especially the semantic functions are still, I think they can give a direction and they can give some inspiration about what kind of literature to explore. But of course, it's not to be expected that the system will always work out 100% perfectly. Our retrieval system uses links into Dharma Nexus and also provides the original text to be as reliable as possible. This does not mean that it's perfect. So it is possible that the representation of the Tibetan, for example, based on our database, is not done 100% correctly if you see the overview. So we can always just encourage our users to look up the actual Tibetan in the Dharma Nexus database, and of course also go beyond that and look at the actual block prints. And this is why we are providing the links in our segment view, because already the e-text representations will have some problems. So there might be typos, there might be OCR mistakes and so on. And we use OCR as well for our data collection. So that is also to be aware of, that our data is not perfect. And then the retrieval system, the AI system that we use, might also introduce additional distortions. And this is just a limitation of the technology. And for that reason, we really want to encourage our users to check the sources manually before citing. I think that's very, very important. Always go back to the main source that is available to verify if the representation is correctly done. Explorer has a number of settings, and I think these are really important in order to understand what can be done with the system. So on the one hand, we have the mode selector, where you can decide whether you want to have the English summary or not, for example. Some of our users prefer to have the English summary. Some people do not like to have that. If you set it to the DB search mode, then it will only give you the database results and it will skip the English summary, which might be preferred for some users. Then we have, again, the input encoding settings. So here you can choose different input encodings. We do have the filter options, which is very important, where you can set the source language to, for example, Sanskrit, Tibetan, Pali or Chinese, and this becomes very important for multilingual queries. So if you have an input in Sanskrit and you want to find something in Tibetan, then you have to set the source language to Tibetan first, because this will then enable the multilingual search system. And after setting the source language, you can also narrow it down further to specific collections. So for example, if you have set the source language to Sanskrit, then you can also narrow down the search to, let's say, the Buddhist non-scriptures, the treatise section of the Buddhist Sanskrit literature. Or you can even go down further and limit the search to only Yogacara material and even down to individual authors. That is also possible. You can search within specific text. And in order to really have, get the most out of the system, we encourage to explore the search function and to, make use of that in your work. Then, we also have the this is the basically when you have the results. So after you have set your settings and you click on the search, you will get the summary here in English, which then again provides a translation of the source and also the segment view here. So this is in ways very similar to the deep research mode, but it has a lot more filter options compared to the deep research mode. So the settings menu here is not available in deep research. And then again, you also have the possibility now to cite these responses. So if you want to refer to this, if you want to use it in some article or something like that, then you can use the cite button here, and then you will get the bibliography handles in order to do that. And here in the same way, like for deep research, we also provide the segment view, which will then include the metadata and further information about the specific result that you are looking at. Yeah, when you set it to the database mode, then you will get the database results directly. So it will skip the English summary part. And here you have the ability to expand the context. You can copy the reference directly. So the specific reference, you can copy that here. And then we also have the explanation button, which is basically providing something very similar to the segment view. So if you click on that, it will give you the links into the different databases and also an overview of the metadata and so on. So that is the function here is very similar to the segment view. A few tips and tricks to be aware of with Mitra Explore. On the one hand, Mitra Explore is not a super smart search engine. So unlike, I don't know, if you go to ChatGPT, you can ask it, what does early Buddhism say about, I don't know, the killing of animals, for example. Mitra Explore is not designed to answer those kind of questions, and we cannot really handle those questions at the moment. So in that sense, if you have period or genre specific searches, then please make use of the filter option, because this enables the system to do targeted exploration, but better not put them into the prompt, because our system is not able to parse that correctly. Of course, it's always better to search in terms directly in the language that you are looking for. So instead of using English terms, if you can use Sanskrit or Tibetan terms, that's increasing the quality. Filtering the search is very important, and we got this feedback in the past that some of our users were a bit overwhelmed by the fact that Explore and Deep Research are gathering results from all over the place. But that's to be expected. If you are not narrowing down the search to specific sections of the canon, then it's very likely going to just try to find something relevant from everywhere, and that obviously can be overwhelming. While the system is able to function without diacritics, if you add proper diacritics, it will improve the quality. Another thing is that Mitra database search currently only provides up to 50 results per query. So we have a hard stop at 50 results. So if you plan to do exhaustive studies of, I don't know, all occurrences of the Iti particle in Yogacara literature, then this is not going to work because it will only give the first 50 and then stop. Yeah, and if you have research questions that require to be more specific, then the filters are the appropriate way. So it's very possible that the kind of passage you're looking for is not among the first 50 results. And in that case, yeah, the recommendation is to use the filters in order to limit it to the relevant sections. Now moving on to the Dharma Nexus database. So here, I will say a few words about this, and maybe we can look at it a bit more in the interactive session later. So Dharma Nexus is basically an intertextuality exploration database that works as the main reference system for Dharmamitra and houses the textual corpora of the data that we have on our system. So this is also important to know because Dharmamitra can only find material that is actually in the database. This is not a big surprise. If the data is not digitized, then our search system will also not find it. And in order to understand what data is available on Dharmamitra, the recommendation is, of course, to have a look at our database and to understand what collections we have, what data is available. And we can do that together in the workshop. Dharma Nexus provides the monolingual intertextual links for Sanskrit, Pali, Tibetan, and Chinese. So this is, yeah, like literal matches between those languages. If there's the same Sanskrit verse in multiple places, then Dharma Nexus will show this. And the same for Tibetan, for Pali, and for Chinese. Then we also have the possibly the biggest collection of multilingual sentence level parallels. So for example, for Tibetan Mahayana Sutras, we have in some cases, we have the Chinese translation aligned on sentence level. So you can click on the sentence and then see the the Chinese version of the Tibetan side by side. And also for Shastric literature, for example, we provide that as well. And currently we are storing about 2 million parallel sentences here. And the interface of Dharma Nexus is much more technical than of the other Dharmamitra functions. So you can see it's like a two-pane database system with yeah, multilingual display. And it's a little bit clunky, it's a bit technical, but if you really want to understand what is going on behind the scenes of Dharmamitra, then having a look at Dharma Nexus is very helpful. Lastly, the Mitra browser extension. So just briefly, in order to find it, you can Google for Dharmamitra Chrome extension. We also have a Firefox extension that also exists. And it basically enables you with a right click, you can mark a piece of text, and then with the right mouse click, you can choose Analyze with Dharmamitra, or you have the small Dharmamitra icon in the extension bar. And then when you click on that, you will get the translation within your web browser. And it mainly provides the same functionality as the dharmamitra.org translation website, but gives you a convenient in-browser experience. So it is in a way very easy to integrate. Also, when you're working with PDF files, for example, it works directly. The interface is very simple. So after marking something and clicking on that Analyze button, you will get this translation here. And if you have something in Sanskrit, then you will also get some grammatical analysis along with that. Yeah. So to summarize, we have the Mitra workflow system where we start with the translation system, which is mainly here to give draft renderings and a quick overview. It's not perfect and it's not designed to be perfect. So it's not there to replace translators, but to give a starting point, a venture point. And then we have the deep research system, which gives an overview of the intertextuality, the links into Dharma Nexus, and helps to orient the passage in the larger data collection that we have. Then we have the Dharma Nexus system, which gives the source context and also enables to explore deeper textual links in a targeted way. And then lastly, we have the Mitra Explore system that yeah, enables a more targeted exploration of specific passages, ideas and concepts and has the filter options to narrow down the results for very specific research questions. Yeah, I think this is the introduction presentation. So at this point, I would like to just also say a few words of thank you. So on the one hand, of course, for the Tzada Foundation that is making the daily operations of Dharmamitra possible, and that is also yeah, organizing this workshop together with Dharmamitra. Then to the Center of Integrated Japanese Studies at Tohoku University, which is also hosting Dharmamitra, co-hosting it. And then we have Foguang AI, which is also significantly supporting Dharmamitra and collaborating with us on tailoring Dharmamitra for the needs of the Foguang community. And lastly, and very importantly, to Kurt Kreutzer, a professor at UC Berkeley, who has been supporting Dharmamitra for over 2.5 years, and his students and postdocs have been very, very important in the making this process, this project possible. Yeah, I think at this point I will stop, and I'm happy to invite questions on this presentation. Yeah.
During your presentation, we had some questions in the chat, so maybe we can start with those. I try to find the first one.
Yeah, I think first of all, the main important thing is, yes, we are recording the meeting, and it will also be put on YouTube, I think, later. So this is as we did with the previous SADA workshop on AI technology as well. So this will come, yeah.
Okay, we had a question from Andrew Christian Kurnawan. When I use other AI, sometimes they hallucinate, lie, or make up something. This I know because sometimes I can just fact check or dig deeper. I haven't encountered with this with Dharmamitra, but that's just because I'm ignorant with the language or the source text, so I can't check. So how can we trust in Dharmamitra's result?
Yeah, I think that's a fundamental limitation of the technology. And of course, Dharmamitra will not replace studying the language properly, I think. And we need to be very clear about that. And in that sense, we try to make sources as accessible as possible from within Dharmamitra. So while we cannot completely avoid hallucinations, we can at least try to provide links that lead back to the actual critical editions and so on. So that's one part of it. And yeah, I think yeah, that's just fundamental limitation that we have. We try our best, yeah, also by providing English reference translations in the future to give references where you can compare the AI translation against the human translation, and then hopefully the quality will improve by that. Yeah, but hallucinations will happen here as well. That's just a fundamental part of the technology.
And there was a discussion in the chat about the APIs. So what APIs are available or this platform is possible to integrate to other systems. And could you please talk about it a little bit?
Mm. Yes, so for our Dharma Nexus database, we have a number of APIs available that you can access publicly, so that's possible. I think we also provide our search engine in API format, so that's also possible, but our translation system is currently not a public API, so this is only accessible via the website. So this is our setup at the moment. Yeah, but if you have a project that requires API access, then also feel free to send us an email, because usually for these functions, it's better to have an agreement on a per project basis. So if you have an idea, if you have a proposal, then please send us an email and we can discuss it. Yeah.
Okay, and there was also one more question from Andrew Christian. What about the Chinese translation terms? They vary from period to period. Did Dharmamitra account for that variations?
Yes, so this is another limitation at the moment. So Dharmamitra, in a way, is optimized to provide the most probable translation. And of course, for Chinese, this means it is biased towards the Xianzhang, Paramata, Kumara, Jiva era of translation. And especially on early material, like for example, Dharmaraksha and earlier, the quality is different. And I think we are working on providing specific modes, and something similar can be said about, for example, Dzogchen literature within Tibetan, or maybe also Burn literature, where Dharmamitra has also very obvious weaknesses at the moment. And yeah, our goal here is to provide specific capabilities where you can select modes. For example, you can define an early Chinese mode that will then change the translation style in order to reflect the material. And the same we plan for Dzogchen and for Burn literature. So one by one, we want to extend the functionality to cover that. Yeah, but currently, it will not be ideal for early Chinese material. Yes.
Okay, next is Sarah Taub. Is there any thought that the database might eventually expand to include non-Buddhist sources like Shaiva, Advaita Vedanta text, etc.?
Yes, so for Sanskrit, we already have a substantial body of non-Buddhist literature. So this is, of course, the Gretel project has a lot of e-texts made available over many years, which is a great resource. Then we have also e-texts from Mukta, and we are also doing our own OCR efforts. So we have already expanded in that regard, but it's an ongoing effort. And obviously for Sanskrit, there's yeah, really no end in sight when it comes to finding new text and new additions to add. So we try to extend that as much as we can. Yeah.
Okay, next question, Sakshi Upadhyay. I have a concern regarding the black box nature of the translations, since I don't know if the tool is actually following strict grammatical rules or just guessing based on patterns. How can we be sure of the linguistic accuracy? Is there any way to check the grammatical logic behind the output?
Mm. I think yeah, I think the short answer would be not really. So we need to be honest here. For Sanskrit, it's a bit better because we do have our dedicated grammar engine that can give some insight into the layout of the compounds and so on. For Tibetan, I think it is difficult. Yeah. So in that sense, the machine has obvious limitations, and yeah, we cannot fully explain how the translations are generated. Yeah.
And there were some questions regarding the OCR, so I combined these questions.
Mm. Yeah.
For example, how the OCR can handle handwritten text and manuscripts, and how does it handle Chinese written texts?
Mm.
Or is it just
Yes.
handle the printed books well?
Yes, so I think our two OCR engines are quite different in profile, and the one that we have for Tibetan is really optimized to handle mainly material that is also in BDRC. So this is like Pecha format material, even though it can also handle printed books. I think we tested that and it's doing quite well, but it's really optimized for the Pecha format. And in that sense, block prints in Uchin, I think should be really stable. There might be, I think you can try it on Ume as well, and I saw it also appeared in the questions, I think, about Ume. So it is able to handle Ume. It's not yet handling Ume perfectly. I think we need to manage our expectations. But I think it may be the first model that can be somewhat usable for Ume as well. So that is possible. For Sanskrit, yeah, I think page format, it's kind of printed Devanagari text in a critical edition or in any like book format edition is what it can handle. Manuscripts, handwritten material, I would be very careful. I wouldn't expect the system at the moment to handle that. We haven't done any manuscript specific data collection yet, and that would be a major effort. Of course, it would be great to do that, but it's just a little bit beyond the scope of a project like Dharmamitra to provide that. But yeah, it would be a great project to work on in the future. And for Chinese, I would say the system is probably rather reliable because Chinese OCR is very mature by now. That's in general, I think the technology has gone a long way for that. Yeah, so I would recommend to try it out and see if it works. And if there are problems, then please let us know. Yeah.
Okay, next question from Lowell Cook. I was wondering if you might say a little more about the visualization section of Dharmamitra. I ask because I have been recently learning about stilometry to
Mm,
determine the authorship and period of
mm,
certain texts.
mm. Yes. So we do have a visualization on Dharmamitra for the Sanskrit literature in our collection. So this is the e-text that we have integrated from projects like Gretel, Sardit, and the Sanskrit Digital Buddhist Canon and others. And we have done basically a combination of secondary literature and Bayesian modeling in order to date the text. And this is, of course, very approximate, and it needs to be said in advance that we are not saying this is a definite dating of this text, but it's mainly there to give an orientation and an idea of what date ranges the text could have. And currently, we don't include Pali material in that. We also don't include the Gandhari material and other like non-Sanskrit in quotation marks text. So it's a bit limited, but it does provide those datings. And yeah, if you have specific questions about Stila Mati, for example, also feel free to write me an email. I would be very happy to discuss that. And I think authorship attribution around this is a very, very interesting problem, and I have some ideas on that. So if you have interest to discuss that, then please send me an email. Yeah.
Okay, next question from Philip Maas. I had difficulties finding the metadata for Sanskrit editions from which the Dharmamitra e-text were generated. Did I
Mm.
overlook something?
Um, I think, I mean, I can very briefly, we have this in the segment view, we have the metadata button, and by clicking on that, the metadata will open. But then we also have added this to Dharma Nexus. If you click on the title of a text, it will show the metadata. It's true that until when did we add that? About a month ago, I think. So until maybe end of May, this was not available. That's true, and that was a true limitation of the system. So we have just added it a couple of weeks ago. So this is a new functionality, but it should be accessible now. And maybe in the workshop part later, we can also show once how to open that. Yeah.
Next question from a user. Is it possible to add semantic prompts for translation, known date, period, location, school, etc.?
Mhm. Yes, I think this is a great idea, and we are currently working on a more comprehensive translation interface that allows to set custom prompts and also to upload your own glossary, for example, and own reference translations. So this will be part of an update in the future. At the moment, it's not yet possible, but we absolutely understand that this would be great for our users. Yeah.
Next from Benjamin Goldstein. For the citation function, will the stable link update as you add features to Mitra?
So the idea of the stable link is to really be as stable as possible. So whatever you see in a certain moment, this will be stored in the database. So if we later change the translation system or we add new functionality, then the stable link will still give you the same output that was there at the time when you generated that answer. So the idea is really to make it possible to take a snapshot of the output and to keep that permanently. So in that sense, it will not be affected by updates, but that should be a good thing because we want to make sure that our output is, yeah, uh, being referred correctly in that regard. Yeah.
Okay, Marcus Perman's question. I noticed with the Dharma Nexus search for Tibetan, I cannot use ArcITS number to search, but have to
Mm,
use Derga numbers for canonical texts. But don't you refer to ArcITS system text? Might be
mm.
useful to allow for ArcITS number search.
Yes, no, I agree about that. That would be really helpful to add. So right now it's totally right. We are limited to the Dirge numbers, but I think that would be helpful. So we will put it on the list. Yeah.
Okay, and the last question. Sometimes when I set my translation to Tibetan, it provides it in Wiley rather than Tibetan font. How do I adjust my settings to get it in Tibetan font?
This is a good point, and I think we haven't really added the option to change the output script at the moment. I think for Tibetan, it's indeed a coin toss. It will sometimes generate Wiley and sometimes generate Tibetan script. So this is a good point. Let's try to unify this. So we will add an option to change that and to toggle that.
Okay, one last, one more last.
Yeah.
Hi, if the user would like the translation to be based on a specific terminology database on a specific web page, would Dharmamitra translation be able to support that?
Yes, so this is going to come in an update in the future. So we want to add the ability to upload your own custom glossary, for example. If you have like an Excel table or some Word document with definitions, then we will add that to the system. So currently, not yet, but it will come. Yeah.
I think that was all the question in the chat. So I
Yeah.
think if there is someone who would like to ask any further questions, then you can raise your hand with the React button and you can ask questions. I will call your name on. Okay, I do not see anyone yet.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
maybe
one
we have.
question from Arunaditya Das. Please ask your
Hello, am I
question.
audible?
Yes.
Hello, I'm Arun. I'm from Pondicherry. Um, it's a very simple question. I would just like to know if there's any way of finding out the extent of the text that the Dharma Nexus uh, database covers. Where can I find out all the text and the extent of what it covers?
Yes. Um, I mean, let's just have a quick look at that. We can do that in the workshop session in more detail, but I will just quickly show how to do that. So, one moment. Let me share my screen in a second. So you should be now seeing the Dharmamitra here, and we have this database button here. And that database button, you can basically go to the Sanskrit part and it will then render the Sanskrit text and you can then access that here. So this is the place where that is possible, yeah. So yeah, via the database, first set the language and then you can see this. So we have this organized via Buddhist scriptures, which roughly equals to the Kangyo collection in Tibetan. Then we have the treatises, which is the Tengyo collection in Tibetan. And then we have Mukta Bodha, for example, then epic literature, for example, Mahabharata, Ramayana. We have Kavya as well, Puranic literature, and so on and so on. So all of this is available here. So this is the overview. And then if you have something specific, like for example, if we stick to Stiramati, you can just type in the name and then you will find the texts that are in our database linked to Stiramati, for example. Or if it's a text like the Mahabharata, for example, you can also type in Mahabharata and then you will see that. So we have the ability to search here, but also you can browse this by collection and this will then hopefully give you an overview of what we have in the database. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, one more question from Christian, please.
Hello, I'm not sure if my camera, wrong camera. Apologies for that.
Works.
First of all, thank you for the fantastic work. I wanted to ask, you said that for the tokenization or word segmentation, you would like to have a better solution.
Mm.
And I was just wondering what you think would be required, what are you using now? and whether any of the existing segmenters like Botok or something like that would, in your opinion, fit the bill, or whether you think something would need to be implemented that is better than that. And of course, I'd be happy to also provide word lists for the dictionary content if that is of any use.
Oh, great, great. Yeah, I think it's actually the more I think about it, the more I think this is actually multiple problems that are hiding under one umbrella because we have on the one hand, for example, literature translated from Sanskrit into Tibetan, where the
Mm.
segmentation would ideally follow, for example, compound structure and so on that we have in the Sanskrit because this is how the translators likely worked. So that would be very desirable for that material. Then I think autochthonous literature would require a very different solution. But then also, I think the dictionaries are great. Dictionaries also have a bit the problem that they can be overproductive. And in a sense, if you have a dictionary that has a lot of, say, I don't know, Abhidharma technical terminology, but you're reading a text that is a Dzogchen text, and it might grab things that are really don't make any sense, and just the word list and the matching alone are limited. The question is, how can we fix that? And I think, in my sense, it's probably a divide and conquer thing where we first start with annotation of material translated from Sanskrit, where maybe a small tree bank would be a good solution, and then also do targeted annotation of text that are autochthonous in order to get that. And then I think one by one we can probably approach the problem. But it is a really challenging one. I think it looks simple, but I think it's not really. And at the moment, what we do is basically a greedy matching of the dictionary entries, and then we try to nudge the model in a way that it does something meaningful with it. And it's like, I think it's a, let's say, a 80% okay solution, but the 20% that don't work out are really a bit annoying, I think. And that is what happens all the time. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, and thank you. And also your work is very, very fantastic. I'm a great fan. Yeah.
Yours certainly is. If there's anything I can do to help with my limited capacity, I'm always happy to try.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I see your hand up, Andrew. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you need help with anything. I have a computer science background, as well as a Buddhist background, but it's non-academic. It's like as a practitioner, so to speak. And I also have a good foundation in Chinese, and I'm also currently unemployed. I'm actually trying to get into a master's program to do Buddhist studies, probably in Taiwan, but that's not going to start till spring. So I actually have a lot of free time. So if there's any, we can contact me directly, or we can talk about it later. But if there's help you need with stuff, I have the time.
Yeah, we are of course always happy to to discuss about like projects we can do, and yeah, feel free to send us an email and follow up, and then we can be a bit more specific about if there's like a sub project we can do together. So yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, this is great. Yeah.
Okay, we have 3 more questions in the chat, so maybe I can read them aloud, and that can be concluding this session. I have been using Tibetan text in Dharma Nexus for some time, and I have noticed that the line numbers could change when I revisit them. This makes citing difficult. How can I prevent this?
I think this is probably referring to one change that we made. And this is, I think about 3 months ago, we switched our e-text basis for Tibetan from the old ASIP e-texts, which are, to my knowledge, based on a Lhasa recension of the Kangyo, to the Isukya version, which is based on the Dirge recension. And this has changed the numbers, yes. And obviously that is annoying, but it was really necessary in order to make it possible for us to link our Tibetan text with RKTS and with the Toda database, because those projects are using the Dirge representation. And also the e-text of the Isukya team is better proofread by now. It has been vetted more, and there are also a number of texts available uh, in uh, in the Dirge version that is not available in the Lhasa version. So there were many reasons to make this change. But yeah, it changed the numbers of the Tibetan text, so sorry for that. Yeah.
Okay, next one from Sakshi Upadhyay. In Vedic interpretation, a single word can have multiple meanings according to Nirukta. When translating a Vedic mantra, how does this tool handle this ambiguity? Does it rely on specific contextual analysis to choose the appropriate meaning, or does it provide a random selection based on its database?
So I think this targets already one of the core problems of machine translation in general, I think, and we don't have a good way to render all possible meanings according to Neokti, for example. That is not possible. And also you have other linguistic phenomena in Sanskrit, like Shlesha, for example, which our system is also not able to handle properly. So this is a clear limitation. We always try to do our best on ambiguous phrases to, let's say, provide one solution that is plausible. But yeah, it's not capable to handle that. And I think it's in general, machine translation technology has not been engineered in ways that it's really optimized to handle those cases. So yeah, there's this clear limitation. Yeah.
Okay, and the next one from J Valentine. Just a note on the explore function. I set the filter to exact match, but the result, especially further down the list, seemed to ignore the exact match filter. I searched Sanjay Jamsang.
Okay, no, that's a good hint. I will check this if there's something we can do about that. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's all the question we have now in the chat again. So if there is any last questions, please do not hesitate to raise your hand.
I think if not, we might take a 10-minute break and then we can continue with the workshop part. Yeah.